Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how I painted the Warriors of Carn Dûm. I am a huge fan and collector of the Lord of the Rings miniatures by Games Workshop, and I don't know about you guys, but I buy way more than I paint. Even though I intend to paint every single one of them, but it will probably take me the rest of my life. Anyway, sometimes it helps when some of the followers on the channel make a request, and one of you guys did. I'm gonna comment you. I'm gonna put you in the comments so you know it's for you. And what really helps is that you are more or less forced to start working on them, even though you want it. You kind of postpone some sets, as I did with this one. And I have painted the leader, Aldrak, of this gang, or at least one of the leaders. And the fun thing about this pack is I did an unboxing video. You can assemble them in many different ways. So it might appear that your assembled miniatures look different than mine, because you can change the antlers, you can change some of the weapons and shields, the poses. But the tutorial I'm going to show you more or less shows you the universal way of painting them, because all of the objects are the same. So have fun. I hope this helps in any kind of way, and if it does, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. And also consider subscribing to my Patreon pages. I'll be painting a lot more different games and miniatures there. And some of them will hit the YouTube channel, some of them will be exclusively to Patreon. So let's get to it. The Warriors of Carn Dûm. Alright, let's get to it. I'm gonna paint all six together, and this is the more or less the leader of the gang. The pose suggests him to be, at least. And I'm gonna show you how I painted all of them, including the banner bearer. Now, first I primed them in a black primer and did a zenithal highlight with some light gray. I based the model with some modeling sand, and we're good to go. I'm using Nightquest Flesh for the skin, the base tone of the skin. Now there is some skin showing on these guys. They have an open, a bare chest. A lot of arms are showing, his hands, the face, of course. I really had to look because there's some straps on his back that could be mistaken for skin or the other way around. So you kind of figure out what is what. Now once I did and let it dry, I washed everything with a Carbro Crimson wash, which makes it really dark and pink, but I think it really works for the shadow of these guys. We're gonna layer over it with some highlights later on. And when you're applying this wash, make sure that you not create any puddles. So when you see some wash clogging up somewhere, just dry up your brush and take it away. Then once that is dry, we're going to redo the larger surfaces with Nightquest Flesh. So actually we're going to be painting about 80% of the previous layer again, but between the fingers I'm going to let some darkness shine through, so all the recessed areas stay nice and dark, and the rest of the skin gets its original color back. Now we're going to start highlighting this by first adding some Kislev flesh to the Nightquest Flesh. And we're going to repeat the previous process, but decreasing the areas that we're painting. So when we first did 80%, we're now going to do about 60%. So focusing on the top of the fingers, the knuckles of course, the thumb, most of the upper chest, and some muscled areas below, and of course the face, below the eyes, the tip of the nose. So just some areas that are raised and would catch more light than others. Once this is done, we're going to do the exact same thing, but now with pure Kislev flesh. So again, focusing on the very tips, so the top of the chest, the knuckles of the fingers, the elbows, so all the sticky out parts. they're going to be the brightest. Then with palette witch flesh, I'm trying to paint in the eyes, which is quite a challenge because he's wearing a helmet and the eyes are very, very tiny. But then again, if it wasn't a challenge, would it be fun? I don't know, sometimes it would. But anyway, let's try and paint in those eyes. If you kind of make a mistake, go over it again by some Night Quest or Flash and repair it, but try and be careful. And of course, the same goes when painting in a pupil with Abaddon Black in this case. I try to give him a serious look. Then for a blonde beard, I'm starting with Steel Legion Drab, and I'm going to show you a darker beard as well. So most of the beard is showing. Very little hair for these guys, aside from the facial hair. Now for the darker models, I used Mechanicus Standard Gray to create a nice gray beard. Now going back to the blonde beard, I'm washing that with some Agrex Earthshade. I'm a tiny bit out of focus here, but you know how washes work, right? And for the gray beard, I'm using Null Oil. Then the blonde beard I am highlighting with some XV88, focusing on the larger surfaces and try and remain, let those dark areas remain. So don't go over that again, so be very, very careful. You get some nice contrast in there. Pick out the mustache as well. And then we're going to repeat that process with Zamazi Desert, but this time focusing only on the extreme highlights. So the top of the beard, the top of the hair, and just some tiny spots on the bottom of the beard. And with the black beard, you can go as bright as you want. I started with some Ashen Gray, which is just a tiny variant to the previous color. We get some nice transition, and afterwards some Administratum Gray to pick out some of those really gray hairs. Focusing on, again, the top or either the bottom. The more visible parts of the beard. Then with dried bark mixed with some Abaddon Black in about a 50-50 mix, I'm painting the shoulder pads. All those leather parts. There is some leather here as well on the legs and around his chest. Also these straps I painted with the exact same color. And the wooden part of the mace. Then with Agrex Earthshade, I'm washing all of the leather parts. Gives it that nice dark look. We're then going to be highlighting that with some Gorthor Brown, just to create a kind of a shine to the armor. So thin down your paints and focus on the larger areas. For the edge highlights, I'm using Baneblade Brown. Try and pick out those fine lines that really separates those pieces from the rest of the armor. Then there's some stitching in there, and for that I used Rock Art Flash. It's a nice complementary color, but still separates it from the rest. It's very visible. And when painting miniatures, I always find it very difficult to make a choice between visibility or reality. So in reality, you know the kind of fabric it's made of, but sometimes the color difference is way too small. For the pants, I'm using Corvus Black. I'm highlighting that with some Ashing Gray. Focusing on the folds, the knees, because it's not really visible, it's just kind of below this skirt, for example, which I painted with Corn Red in a mixture of Abaddon Black. So darken it down just a little bit. And that way we can use pure Corn Red to highlight it later on. So when painting this, make sure to hit the inside as well, between his legs. And then we're going to continue to our next step with Gray Sear. I'm painting the sash with pure Gray Sear. Because I did a zenithal highlight, it wasn't pure of color, and I want it to be kind of white looking, dirty white looking. So the base coat is Gray Sear. We're going to shade that later on. Now the first shade we're using is on the reds, and for that we're using Carborough Crimson. And the second shade we're going to use is Apothecary White on the white satchel. I love this Apothecary White instead of, for example, Nuln Oil, because Nuln Oil is quite dark and this is a subtle gray shade, which is actually a contrast paint. I'm using the same color, the Apothecary White, on the wool parts on his legs. That really brings out the details. And then back to the skirt. Corn Red, pure Corn Red, to highlight the upper parts of those folds. So the parts that are facing upwards, that would catch the most light, of course. After this, we're going to do an extreme highlight of Evil Sun's Scarlet, which is really bright, and for this I'm only focusing on the very top edges, so you get a nice transition from dark to bright. Alright, now it's time to paint the wraps around his arms and the weapon, and for that I'm using a base coat of Galvorbag Red. There's some wraps around the antlers as well, tying the antlers to his helmet. And around the weapon he's carrying. Some of those shields have some red wraps, but we'll get to that later in the video. So I'm painting those traps here, and once everything is dry, we are going to wash it, and for that I'm using Carroburg Crimson as well. Now let's focus on the straps around the woolen parts on his legs and the boots. I used Fondia Brown as a base color. When using a lot of browns, for example these shoulder pads, the leather straps, the weapons, the boots, I kind of like it when those colors are different but work together. And I think this Fondia Brown is a nice bright leathery brown look, but still works with the rest of the armor. So I'm painting all of these straps, and also some of those guys are holding a satchel or sorts, so painting that with the same color as well. And we're next going to be highlighting that with some Mournfang Brown. Pure Mournfang Brown works quite okay. Thin it down just a little bit and add some highlights here and there. Then I'm dry brushing some Bugman's Glow to the straps on his arm weapon and the antlers. Now you can do edge highlights, tiny edge highlights if you want, but this is an easier way of getting more or less the same result. Then with pure gray cere, I'm painting in the inside of the shield. Why, you might think? Because I'm going to use a contrast paint for painting the inside, the wooden effect. The edges of the shield are metal, and for that I used lead belcher. You can go darker, for example, with some iron warriors, or, well, mix it down with some black if you want, but I remained quite bright for this one. Now there's some inside and outside visible parts of this edge. The middle of the shield is all metal. And of course the weapon he is carrying is also a metal part. That goes for the spears as well as the maces, and of course the helmet. Now the helmet is going to have some gold finish as well, and the edges I am going to paint in a gold color, just as the box art shows, so I'm leaving those gray for now. You can give it a base color of lead belcher as well if you want. And there's these tiny metal triangles hanging on his waist, some are on his wrist, hanging on the belt, so there's a lot of those. And then with some snakebite leather, I'm painting in the inside of the shield, giving it a nice wooden look. There's not much showing on the front, because most of these models have these wraps all around it. And don't forget the inside of the shield as well. You can go quite heavy on this one if you want, because it creates some nice shading, especially on the inside. Now the straps on the outside I painted with Mechanicus Standard Gray, and some of them on the box art at least have some red cloth hanging around it as well. And this red cloth I'm painting with the same mixture as the skirt, corn red with some Abaddon black, highlighting it with some pure corn red. And if you paid any attention in this video, you know what's coming next. It is going to be Evil Sunz Scarlet, yes, for the extreme highlight. And that way it really combines with the skirt. The highlights just focus on the top, determine your light source and make sure that the reflections are coming from the same angle for all of your miniature. It gives it some extra sharpness, doesn't it? Then for the bright gray parts, I'm doing the same with Dawnstone, adding some edge highlights. Again, focusing on the top for this particular model. And I'm giving it some extreme highlights with Administratum Gray. Next step, with some non-oil, I'm washing all of the metal parts, as well as the weapons and the helmet. And next I'm going to use Cygor Brown. Now I pre-painted the fringes below the shoulder pads and other parts where this material is visible with gray cere before, so you can use this as a contrast paint and it really gives a nice bright brown look. Then with some Liberator Gold, I'm painting all the gold details on the helmet. Check the box art if you want, it's all around the eyes, going below, beside here, and then further to the back of the helmet. There's also some gold details on the weapons. That goes for the spears as well as the maces. And I decided to paint the belt buckle in a gold color as well. Then with some palette witch flesh, I'm painting the antlers. You can go darker, but I decided to keep them kind of white and wash them later on. Of course, you can start with a darker color, for example, carrick stone or ushabti bone maybe. I wanted them to be quite bright, as it really stands out to the rest of the colors. Then wash them with null oil. There's some bones on his back, some skulls and bones, and most of them are wearing this. And for that I'm using carrick stone as a base color and washing those with some agate earthshade. Then with Mournfang brown I'm picking out some of the hairs we painted before with the contrast paint on this furry part below his shoulder pads. And just above the arm straps. Then picking out some silver details with Stormhost silver. Adding some shine and some sharpness to the shield, focusing on those corners, some edge highlighting here and there. It really gives it some sharpness, and the same goes for the weapon. So the spear as well as the mace. Now with the spear, you can create some sharpness on those corners and the sides of the spear that gives it a really sharp look. Then finally the base I painted with some Garagax sewer, which is a nice dark earthy tone. And really works with a bright undercoat. And then I'm going to show you how I painted the banner of the banner bearer. I'm starting with a base color of Abaddon black, pure black. Again, I love the contrast with the quite bright armor elements they're wearing, the reds and the different shade of reds also on the wrist pads, the silvery and the white. So black is a nice addition to this. I'm highlighting it with some Mechanica Standard Gray, focusing on the raised areas that will reflect a tiny bit of light. I'm not going to make it too bright. Just some lines here and there, some edge highlighting. Then with some gray sear, I'm going to paint in a logo, and I'm trying to recreate the thing on the box art. It's kind of a weird shape, but it really fits. It's a big banner, so it's good to fill it, right? So try and make your own drawing here. I always find it quite challenging to paint the image on all the folds, because you want it to be natural looking, and the image cannot be a straight image if the cloth is folded or wrinkled. Then with some Mournfang brown I'm adding some wood grain to the base color that we painted before. So some very fine lines or highlights, and the same goes for the spear and the mace. Now once this is finished, you can add some color to the antlers on the banner using the same technique, or go darker if you want. You have a finished set of Warriors of Carn Dûm. Now thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope it was of any help to you guys. If you have a request of your own, please make it, and I'll try and see if I have it lying around and start painting it for you. These were the Warriors of Carn Dûm, and if you enjoyed this kind of content, please consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll keep you posted on any future videos, and please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. As I mentioned before, I also have a Patreon page where I'm painting a lot more different games than the Lord of the Rings, and some of those videos will hit the YouTube channel maybe in half a year or so, and others will be exclusive to Patreon. So if you are interested, please check it out and leave some comments there as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in one of my next videos. Bye bye!